To have you on the show. Claire McCaskill has the first question for you. Claire?
Eric, welcome. My question to you is, you were in the room yesterday, right, when Taylor testified?
Yes.
How many Republicans were there?
So there were a lot when we started. I counted about 75 people in this very small room. About two-thirds of them were members. Now, at the end of the day, after all of the complaints about the process, after all of the attacks on the chairman, it was about a 10-to-1 ratio of Democrats to Republicans. So we stick around. We take this seriously.
At the beginning, how many Republican members were in the room when
dozens.
And when he gave his opening statement, they were all there. Correct?
Yes.
And they had an opportunity to ask any questions they wanted to ask, correct?
So it's a great question, Senator. Yes, they get equal time, equal amount of staff, equal amount of members.
And the reason it's in the basement is because that's where the SCIF is. Would you explain to everyone what the SCIF is and why everyone in Congress takes briefings and has hearings in the basement, whether they're senators or members of the House, because of where this particular hearing room is located?
Yeah, it's 3 floors below the Capitol. No cameras inside, no phones allowed inside. Any classified notes stay inside. Classified conversations stay inside. It's to protect the information. And in this case, there was no special counsel. There was no special prosecutor. The Attorney General refused to even take up this case. So we have to do this in a closed environment because we know that if witnesses know what other witnesses will say, they will tailor their testimony and cook up alibis. And we actually have reason to believe that that may be going on. So we're trying to protect that information to the degree that we can.
I think people don't understand that this is a bipartisan effort in terms of the Republicans being there, hearing everything and questioning witnesses. And I really hope that that's emphasized, because their only defense now is process. That's all they've got. And even that argument is so fundamentally flawed.
Senator, you're right, and they use a lot of their time in the beginning of each of these hearings to attack the process. They have access to be there, but then you see them all just get up and leave, and you're sitting there wondering, well, if you're so interested in the process, why don't you participate and listen for these 10-hour sessions? Most cases, most of the Democrats stay. Very few Republicans stay. And if they did stay, and if they heard what these witnesses are saying, I hope that just like that they would be moved and very concerned about what it means for our country and our Constitution.
So, Congressman, yesterday, with the Republicans in attendance in the basement, did you hear any of them ask a question? Did you hear any of the questions? If so, what kinds of questions did they ask?
Cockamamie conspiracy questions.
Of Ambassador Bill Taylor?
Yes. More 2016 Hillary server, what about our emails, that type of nonsense.
No.
Wow.
Hey, Congressman, Devin Nunes came out and gave an interview out after the hearing and said that Congressman Ratcliffe, I believe the term he used was destroyed the witness and established that there was no quid pro quo. Can you shed any light of that? Did you see that?
That did not happen. If you read the Post opening statement, I think what you see is, one, that there was, in fact, a connection between having a White House meeting and getting security assistance only if the Ukrainians would investigate the Bidens and investigate and exonerate Russia for the 2016 role, but also that you saw 2 sharp, straight lines, not just Donald Trump to Rudy Giuliani, because the defense, I think, has been, well, this is rogue Rudy. No, you have a sharp, straight line between the president and his lawyer and the president and Ambassador Sondland, who says in this Washington Post opening statement that was leaked that the president is saying to connect investigations to aid.
So, Congressman, how did you assess your witness yesterday, Ambassador Taylor? He obviously took very detailed notes, a career diplomat, an experienced diplomat who knew he needed to get some of this down in writing. He had dates and times and everything else. The White House came out yesterday and referred sort of indirectly to him as a radical, unelected bureaucrat. How did you assess his credibility in the room over those 9.5 hours?
Well, I saw this radical, unelected bureaucrat walk into a room of about 75 people, a very small room, with a commanding, courageous presence, take a seat, and for 40 minutes lay out what he saw, starting with his own credentials of serving in Vietnam after West Point in the 101st Airborne Division, working in the Senate, working for NATO, working at the State Department, coming out of retirement to take a job that he didn't need to take to serve his country. He had unimpeachable credibility and a detailed recall of the events that had happened.
Congressman, it's John Lemire. We've been discussing a lot this morning about the real-world consequences here, that Ukrainians' lives were in jeopardy. We saw the media's obtain the opening statement from Ambassador Taylor. He discusses at length the need for Ukraine to be an important American ally, the threat that they face every day from Russia. So particularly with that, how stark this is. This isn't about politics. It's about real lives here, real-world consequences. Is what you heard yesterday, very simply, is what you heard yesterday an impeachable offense?
We're going to give the president a fairer trial than he deserves. If this was Donald Trump justice, he'd be impeached by now. But in America, even people who confess to crimes get a fair process. So he's going to get that. Jonathan, I'm glad you brought up, though, the human element here, because if you're an American at home who has been just outraged by what's been going on with the slaughtering of the Kurds and the green light that the president has given them, you should be very concerned that this president was withholding aid that is your taxpayer dollars that was supposed to help the Ukrainians. And while that aid has been withheld, every second that goes by, that has led to dead Ukrainians, aid that would have helped them defend themselves. And as you saw in that Washington Post statement from Ambassador Taylor, 13,000 Ukrainians have died. They very much could have had more lives saved if the aid had come through rather than been held over the head to only benefit Donald Trump's re-election campaign.
So, Congressman Swallow, I just want to clear one thing up. Ambassador Taylor, 40 minutes, reads his opening statement. He has impeccable credentials, as everyone clearly now knows. And during the question and answering session that ensued, an unnamed Republican actually asked Ambassador Taylor about Hillary Clinton's emails.
No, you saw the line of questioning was about this cockamamie theory that the Ukrainians were involved and interfered in the 2016 election, this server theory that Donald Trump continues to spin. That's the theme that we're seeing here, is really to go back and look at 2016 just as Donald Trump wants. No member on their side, I think, has let the gravity of this sink in and what it means for our national security, what it means for our Constitution. And that's what's so frustrating. And those that have looks of disgust on their face, and I've seen that, we would really like them to start asking questions and have the courage to show that they are concerned, because I know they're concerned and they know it's not right.
So, Congressman, you're not going to change the mind of Devin Nunes or some of those Republicans who've decided it's their life's work to protect President Trump. But do you, maybe even in your private conversations, talk to any Republican members who've now read the summary of the phone call with the presidents of the United States and Ukraine, or seen the whistleblower report, or now heard this incredible testimony for Ambassador Taylor, and have said to you, boy, there is something here?
One member said to me he's very concerned and he wants us to not rush this. And I took that to heart, but I told him we will be fair, but if we go on a protracted investigation here, Donald Trump is just going to, try and tie us up in court, give himself moral equivalence, and give everyone a nickname and confuse the American people. So we want to move fairly, but also swiftly.
So, Congressman, I just want to clarify something you touched on earlier, a fear that the administration might be doing something to coordinate testimony. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so what we have seen, and I'm not going to go into it, but we have seen evidence that witnesses have talked to other witnesses. And the reason we're having these hearings in this fashion is so that when witnesses testify, the information is held closely. If the information is getting out in the public, then they're able to work together and try and get their stories, together and aligned, especially if they're